Hey y'all! My first video for this channel was a breakdown of some of the major factions in the Warhammer universe. And while I was able to give the broad strokes of these factions, I barely scratched the surface on a majority of their lore. I mean, how can you make a Warhammer video without mentioning Space Marines? To rectify this, the next few videos I'll be putting out will be a deeper look into the Imperium of Man, Eldar, Necrons, and Orcs. One thing we will have to take into consideration when talking about the various factions in this setting is the idea of an unreliable narrator. You see, the setting of Warhammer is kind of malleable. Things change and become irrelevant very quickly. There are some ideas that were brought forth in the actual stories of the setting that are irrelevant and proven to be untrue. So take everything I say in this video with a grain of salt and some healthy caution. This video will be focusing on the Imperium of Man, as I will explain its genesis from the Golden Age of humanity through the Emperor of Man and why the whole thing has really gone to shit. Humanity in the Warhammer setting sits in an interesting position. The history of our race can essentially be seen as identical to the history we all know. All of the historical figures we know, and even ourselves, can be said to exist in the Warhammer 40k setting. We're all just in the past. So we can be seen as the forefathers of the spacefaring human race. As time passed, we gained greater and greater mastery of technology, and our understanding of the universe grew until we eventually carried off into the stars, kicking off an age of exploration and discovery. This era would come to be known as the Golden Age of Humanity, as the people of this time lived in a post-scarcity society with their machines and AI being able to create anything that was necessary for their people. This is a far cry from what humanity experiences today in the Imperium of Man, so the question becomes, what happened to the prosperity of the human race? Well, the answer is complicated, as multiple disasters happened in succession that ended up breaking up the interconnected galaxy, leaving many of the worlds of humanity isolated. The first great calamity would come from the Men of Iron. The AI that once helped humanity would turn against their creators in an attempt to wipe out all of the human race. So, Skynet, basically. This would lead to a cataclysmic war in which many of the worlds would be destroyed as humans fought for survival. Yet, the empires of humanity would survive this disaster as they destroyed all known AI in the galaxy, leading to a complete ban on artificial intelligence for the human race. AI would henceforth be known not as artificial intelligence, but as abominable intelligence. I know it's a little corny, but it certainly gets the point across. If this was the only disaster that befell humanity, then the human race would have most likely regained their former glory. But unfortunately for mankind, the Eldar were busy creating a goddamn god which was about to blow a psychic hole in the galaxy. With the birth of Sinesh, a hole to the Immaterium would open in real space, creating a gateway for the many denizens of the warp to enter our reality. And just as a reminder, actual demons are contained within the warp, so it's easy to understand how there being a giant hole for them to just come through would be pretty bad. In addition, the warp also became unstable, leading to warp travel becoming impossible. Now, you may be asking yourself, what's warp travel? Which is an excellent question. You see, the galaxy as we know it is really big, which makes getting from place to place kind of hard. But mankind figured out a shortcut. If you jump into the warp for a bit, you can travel much faster. Which was great when the warp was calm, but with the birth of Sinesh, you could imagine traveling through the warp as trying to sail the seas with a nuclear bomb exploding in front of you, which, again, would be kind of hard. And to make matters worse, if that were even possible, the psychic reverberations of this event awakened the latent psychic abilities of many humans, which would seem like a good thing if it weren't for the fact that giving ignorant humans psychic powers is like giving a toddler a shiny red button that would launch the entirety of America's nuclear arsenal. Now, I know this sounds like an exaggeration, but hear me out. When using psychic powers, the psyker has to draw these powers from somewhere, right? And that place would be the warp. You see the problem, right? They legit have to let their mind enter hell to do magic. They also, of course, would have no idea what they're doing, since who's gonna teach magic to a populace that didn't even know it existed a few days ago? this would lead to new psychers opening literal portals to hell that would cause entire societies and planets to die, as demons would scour the planet murdering the populace. Now, with humanity on the ropes, a figure would emerge. Any guesses? Yes, the Emperor of Mankind. Now, the Emperor is an interesting character in Warhammer, as he's a bit of an enigma. For being the most important figure in humanity, surprisingly little is known about him. Even what we think we know is not 100% set in stone. I mean, we don't even know this guy's name, let alone what he really wants for humanity. With that being said, there's one thing we're pretty sure about the Emperor, and that is he's old. Like, really old. It is thought that Big E's birth took place during the hunter-gatherer era of mankind. Now, this is possible because Big E is what is known as a perpetual, a human that cannot die from old age or any normal means. This longevity enabled the Emperor to experience much of human history, which caused him to form what I would best call strong opinions, as he would take up pivotal roles throughout history, such as kings and religious figures. This time can be seen as where his disdain for religion comes from, as every time he would encounter any form of worship, he would seek out its destruction. It is thought that he did this because he knows that any worship can be used to fuel the Chaos Gods, but this is ultimately unclear. Let's recap the Emperor. He's a super old, immortal magic guy that conquered humanity. But why didn't he help humanity during the Age of Strife, you might ask? We have no idea. Like, no clue what the hell he was doing during that time. I mean, maybe he was helping, but we just have no way of knowing. What we do know is that towards the 30th millennium, the Emperor would roar onto center stage as he would unify Terra, aka Earth, under his dominion, utilizing genetically enhanced super soldiers known as the Thunder Warriors and the Custodes respectively. These two groups couldn't be any more different, however. The Thunder Warriors were an incomplete and ultimately flawed attempt at creating super soldiers, as even though they were incredibly effective warriors, they were plagued with mental illness that caused them to fly into uncontrollable rages. In addition to these problems, the warriors also had tragically short lives, as debilitating cancers would ultimately lead to their deaths. The Custodes, on the other hand, were one of the Emperor's greatest successes, as they could be likened to master-crafted weapons, whose sole purpose was to see the Emperor's will done. Using these two armies, he was able to conquer the entirety of Terra. Yet, when he was done with this, he no longer had any use for his flawed creation. During his takeover of Terra, his scientists were hard at work at creating a replacement for the Thunder Warriors, which would come to be known as the Space Marines. I can finally talk about Space Marines. It only took me like 10 minutes, but here we are. The Emperor would use his new warriors to cull the Thunder Warriors, along with the help of the Custodes. This would give a really good look into who Big E is. This man was willing to sacrifice anything in the pursuit of his goals, including who we will be talking about next, the Primarchs. The creation of Space Marines was a long and difficult process that would push even the godly Emperor to his limits. To help stabilize the gene seed, a progenitor would be needed, and this role would be taken up by new beings created by the Emperor's scientists. They would use the Emperor's own DNA to create 20 sons that would be known as the Primarchs. These beings would be used as a template to create gene seed that would be used to make Space Marines. But unfortunately, after this process was completed, tragedy would strike. The pods containing the infant Primarchs would be stolen, leading to the infant sons of the Emperor being shot into the warp, causing them to be scattered across the galaxy. This would clearly end up being a bit of an annoyance for the Emperor, as he would have to search the stars for many years to locate his wayward sons. Now, I'm going to skip over a bunch of stuff to get to the juicy information, so just take my word for it. All the bad things that are about to happen is because Magnus did everything wrong, and the Emperor's a bad dad who should have just hugged his sons. So, Horus was the Emperor's favorite son, and was trusted with being the War Master of the Empire, which is kind of a big deal. The only problem was, he got stabbed by a blade that corrupted him and turned him to the side of the Chaos Gods, which is, of course, bad. But it gets worse. So the Emperor, in his infinite wisdom, never told his sons about the literal evil gods that exist. So they stuck their noses in places that they shouldn't have, leading to half of them joining Chaos. As Horus was corrupted by this demonic blade, he would lead a crusade against his father, causing what is now known as the Horus Heresy. This war would lead to the deaths or corruption of seemingly half of humanity, as even Big E would be mortally wounded by Horus in the final battle, this being the Siege of Terra. Now, after being mortally wounded, he would proceed to murder Horus and destroy his soul outright so he could never return. Which is a feel-good story of the century, am I right? Right, guys? Great dad. After this, the Emperor would be placed on the Golden Throne as a means of staying alive. This would be twofold, as it, one, kept him alive, but he would also use his psychic prowess to create a lighthouse in the warp, allowing his subjects to more easily travel through this galaxy. And while this is helpful, it obviously doesn't feel too good, because in the current setting, the Emperor is a literal rotting corpse, a skeleton being sustained by the psychic potential of 1,000 psychers a day, where he literally rips their souls apart for energy to stay alive. And just so you know, this has been going on for the past 10,000 years. 1,000 psychers a day? 10,000 years. I don't know if I want to do the math. I know that was a lot of information, but the good news is, I still skipped out on a lot of stuff. I know, it's crazy. So there will be a follow-up video that will break down the different Space Marine legions in the Primarchs at a later date. But to keep this video short and sweet, that's where we're gonna end for today. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and please, if you have any suggestions for future content, leave a comment, and thanks for watching. Peace.